New rule, if you're going to comment on a Supreme Court decision, you have to actually read the decision first. I'm talking about the recent Citizens United versus FEC decision everyone's so up in arms about. And what's probably the most surprising, although it shouldn't be, is that most of the screaming about it is coming from liberals, who keep paying lip service to freedom of speech, unless, of course, it becomes inconvenient for them. Why don't we hear it from the president himself?
But this week, the United States Supreme Court handed a huge victory to the special interests and their lobbyists, and a powerful blow to our efforts to rein in corporate influence. This ruling strikes at our democracy itself. By a 5-4 vote, the court overturned more than a century of law.
We see the same thing from congressmen such as Alan Grayson. By gutting the 100-year-old Tillman Act ban on corporate contributions, the U.S. Supreme Court has opened the door to political bribery and corruption on the largest scale imaginable. And we hear it from the political pundits as well, how the Supreme Court overturned a century of regulations and opened the door wide for corporations to control everything. Here's the first problem. The Supreme Court did not overturn Tiller. They didn't even touch it. Tiller had nothing whatsoever to do with their decision. Moreover, the Supreme Court did not overturn any financing or reporting requirements, or the requirements that such advertisements include disclaimers. Obama, Grayson, and the rest of them are lying. To see why, we need to look at what the Supreme Court did overturn. The first thing they overturned was Austin versus Michigan Chamber of Commerce, which was only 20 years ago, not 100. In Austin, the court ruled that citizens groups, which are technically corporations under the law, do not have free speech protections with regards to political speech. They also overturned a part of the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act prohibiting these groups from political advertising within 60 days of a general election or 30 days of a primary. See, that's one of their lies, pretending that corporations are big lobbyists and special interests, which of course have been pretty much unrestrained all this time. No, corporations in this sense are quite different. Did you know that the James Randi Educational Foundation is a corporation? Let's look at the actual Supreme Court decision. Courts, too, are bound by the First Amendment. We must decline to draw and then redraw constitutional lines based on the particular media or technology used to disseminate political speech from a particular speaker. First Amendment standards must give the benefit of any doubt to protecting rather than stifling speech. The law before us is an outright ban, backed by criminal sanctions. Section 441B makes it a felony for all corporations, including non-profit advocacy corporations, either to expressly advocate the election or defeat of candidates, or to broadcast electioneering communications within 30 days of a primary election and 60 days of a general election. Thus, the following acts would all be felonies under Section 441B. The Sierra Club runs an ad within the crucial phase of 60 days before the general election that exhorts the public to disapprove of a congressman who favors logging in national forests. The National Rifle Association publishes a book urging the public to vote for the challenger because the incumbent U.S. Senator supports a handgun ban. And the American Civil Liberties Union creates a website telling the public to vote for a presidential candidate in light of that candidate's defense of free speech. These prohibitions are classic examples of censorship. How refreshing to see the Supreme Court take a hardline stand on the Constitution. For once. But listen to what Rachel Maddow said about the decision.
If you are a regular person who's ever made a campaign donation before, forget about ever having to do that again. What's the point in individual people trying to influence politics with their donations if Exxon or some other company can quite literally match and therefore cancel out the combined donations of every single individual donor in the nation whenever it wants, in one check. And it can do it every year, in every campaign, in every state, in every race. Going forward, corporations will be able to use unlimited money to support or oppose candidates in federal office. This isn't CEOs, individual rich guys using their private money. It isn't people forming political associations to do political work. It is big business.
That is an outright lie, and anyone who's actually read the decision knows it. And there are tons more lies being told about it, far too many to go into here. These politicians and pundits do not care about you. These laws are not campaign finance reform, they're incumbent protectionism. They're there to protect them, silence your voice, and cripple challengers. We saw how much grassroots support Ron Paul had. We also saw the lies and the despicable tactics used to marginalize him. Can you imagine if Ron Paul's grassroots supporters could have bought advertising on those very same stations? These guys got a freaking blimp, for crying out loud! With enough money for advertising, perhaps even half-hour infomercials of the kind that finally got people to take Ross Perot seriously in 1992, who knows how different things would have been? This decision is a victory for you and me. The only threat this decision poses is to the incumbent politicians and the media oligopoly. Obama and those in Congress are against the decision because they will now face stiffer competition from opponents, and the news pundits are against it because they just lost their monopoly and are no longer the only corporations who can mention candidates shortly before an election. The biggest power we have as voters is our freedom of association, but that is exactly what these so-called campaign reform laws stifle. The media and the incumbents consistently and continually lie about what your choices are, and thanks to these laws, we have very little defense against them. Whereas the corporate news media can use whatever money they want, however much they want, to talk about politicians, candidates, issues, and ideas. That makes them a privileged class. Those privileges haven't been eliminated, but at least they've been lessened quite a bit. What campaign finance reform really does is stifle grassroots action while doing nothing to stop lobbyists and special interests. And what the court really did was to stop the media being a privileged class, the only ones who can mention a federal candidate 60 days before an election. That is wrong. That is way wrong, and that's what the Supreme Court struck down. Good for them. And shame on Obama.